Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. In this video, I want to look at some dietary things in regards to macrobiotics and grain-based diets. Basically, so the main argument that a lot of people make is that traditionally people ate grains as the mainstay of their diet, and this is what is healthy, despite all the evidence that we're coming across now. Most of these people haven't done any research, first of all. These are not very intelligent people, or at least very curious people who are making these arguments. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes you have various doctors and whatnot who prescribe a grain-based diet, but essentially, the grain-based diets are major contributors to cancer and disease in these days. And that's not to say that there are not other factors in cancer and disease. There definitely are. However, this idea that grains are plant-based and therefore they must be healthy, and people ate them traditionally, therefore they must be healthy, despite the fact that if you're macrobiotic or on a grain-based diet for a long period of time, you're likely to get cancer and die from either cancer or other all-cause mortality, which we've seen again and again and again. In the macro community, it's an epidemic. I'm just going to be frank because I'm sick of it, and there's really no use, and it's quite toxic to make excuses for it, and people keep doing that. And it's sick and disgusting, and it's really horrible, and I don't like, I just, it happens again and again and again. And I could go on. I mean, George Assawa, the founder of Macrobiotics, died in his 70s, and people are like, oh, that's because he contracted tropical ulcers. Well, okay, fine. Michio Kushi and Aveline both died of cancer. And then everyone's like, well, Michio smoked and he ate like crap. Okay, fine. Aveline died of cancer. Well, did she die? Well, people have excuses for her too. And their daughter Lily, they didn't do it well enough. My father died of cancer. Warren Kramer died of cancer. Murray Snyder died of cancer. Diana Voley died of cancer. There are others who are not teachers who died of cancer. Plenty, like not just a little, like a lot. There was Charles Millman died from I'm not sure of the exact cause, but he had severe osteoporosis. There was what's his name? In Amsterdam, another macrobiotic teacher, he died young. There was one who died from an accident, so maybe, okay, that's a different cause. Point is, long-time macrobiotic success rate is like abysmal failure. And I would assume the same for any grain-based diet. Primarily, a lot of it has to do with the obsession over veganism. Not always, but a lot of times, because you're not getting enough nutrition with veganism, and therefore you're going to be eating all kinds of other things that are unhealthy, weakening the system, too much fried foods and all that, which I've already talked about. Some people blame smoking, which doesn't account for all the macros who did not smoke ever and died of cancer. So those are stupid people, right? People who can't put two thoughts together. There's like, oh, well, they smoke, therefore that's the reason. No, that's not the reason. What about all the macros who died of cancer who didn't smoke? What's their cause of their cancer, right? So we know that there's a lot of issues with blood sugar and carbohydrates, constantly spiking your blood sugar, which macrobiotics pays no attention to. It really doesn't. Like, we have like zero clue about blood sugar. Never have I ever, in all my years of study of macrobiotics or any grain-based diet, heard them talking about blood sugar, which is important. You need to understand blood sugar, and you need to understand if you are going to, I'm not anti-carbohydrates. Like, I'm not like full-on ketosis, ketogenic diet type person. I will eat carbohydrates. I think they're important, but you need to understand that they need to be limited, and you need to eat them in a healthy way, which means learning how to not spike blood sugar. And this is something that when I say we, modern science is just learning how with continuous glucose monitors. We're really getting on the, nutritionists, doctors, health-minded people are really getting on the cutting edge of this. It's something very important. And just briefly, from what I've learned, the way to reduce blood sugar spikes when you're eating carbohydrates is start the meal with vinegar and water, or vegetables with vinegar, right? You want to fill your belly with vegetables and vinegar. This will reduce the spike blood sugar. Next, don't eat your carbohydrates alone or plain. Eat them with fat and protein and fiber, right? So if you have rice, eat it with oil and vinegar and some protein and like not just separately, not just like this like in macrobiotics we have like grain center diet, big portion of grain, and then like separate, like you need to mix it in, and then small amount of grain mixed in with vinegar and oil and protein and vegetables, right? Like a salad or a stew or something, like a mix, a dish, right? Or like pasta and sauce, or like obviously bread with other things, fat and things like a sandwich, right? Next is understanding that the so-called anti-nutrients, which are often dismissed and poo-pooed in macrobiotic circles as nonsense, which is really an arrogance, right? That we can't afford, because macrobiotics has an absolute abysmal failure as far as long-term success rate. Abysmal failure, like not just a little, like we just we're like kind of like failing grade. Like that's how, like you go back, you are an abject failure in that regard. No excuse, like just the worst possible score of long-term success. And I'm being harsh for a reason, because everyone just cuts a slack, and that's why it continues on. Horribly bad macrobiotics rating for long-term success. So macrobiotics is basically a cancer diet or a sickness diet for long-term, right? It is. So I'm tired of these people making excuses and be like, oh, this is the way people eat for. First of all, I mean, every single macrobiotic person I've ever met, almost 90-some%, are as lazy as can be and do nothing. They just sit there and sit there and do nothing all day. And they're like, oh, that's the way traditional people eat. Like, you fucking idiot. I really want to punch some people in the fucking face for being so goddamn stupid. People in the past, first of all, were poor, okay? And they had to work day and night. They had to work all the time just to survive, right? Second of all, they couldn't afford tons of anything other than grain. They were surviving. It wasn't because this is like the healthiest diet, like, oh, this is so healthy. No, this is all they had. They were trying to live, right? That's why they ate grain, because they couldn't afford tons of oil. They didn't have tons of oil. They didn't have tons of protein, right? They had to. The two fuels that we have for burning in our body are carbohydrates or fat, right? But they couldn't afford fat, so they had to eat carbohydrates. They had to. And yes, they were healthy people, but they were extremely active. All their food was organic. All their water was as pure as can be. The air was as pure as can be. They lived like a 1 billion mile like chasm between modern people who are like, oh, I'm a traditional person. No, you're not. Go fuck yourself. Like, you're really, really stupid to compare and I hear this again and again and again. Your modern ridiculous copycat diet, like you're living like a traditional person. No, you're not. Like, get it out of your stupid head. You're nothing like a traditional person. First of all, every single, like I just said, you're lazy as can be. You just sit there doing nothing, or you go for a half-hour walk. You're like, oh, I'm very active. No, you're not. I do landscaping all day. That's why I'm dressed like this. I'm active. I'm active from early morning till, evening. Virtually, right? Sometimes I take it easy at night, but I still do my ice So anyway, I'm very active, but most people are not. Like most people are the exact opposite of active, and they think because they get stressed out easily that they're overworked and overstressed, and they need to take it easy. Actually the opposite is true, because they pamper themselves so much that they get easily stressed out and they can't take any pressure. Actually, you need to do more difficulty, more walking, more activity, more ice baths, more intermittent fasting, and less pampering yourself. Everyone turns themselves into a big goddamn baby, then they die of cancer, right? So yeah, these modern grain-based diets are not healthy, because we need a more nuanced approach. And just because people did things in the past doesn't mean that's the way we need to do them right now or in the future, right? People idolize, like they see these movies, pictures, and they idolize people from the past, and they think, I want to live more like that. I don't like this modern world. It's just the wrong conclusion, right? I mean, because of everything I said, like poverty and diet and lifestyle, like they had to eat that way. Doesn't mean it's the best way. So yeah, it's just very frustrating when people keep making excuses so they can keep doing the same things and change nothing, and just be like, oh, this is the healthiest diet because people ate it in the past. There's no evidence that people ate like you're eating. Like, you don't know how they ate. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, were you there? Like, you remember? No, you're just imagining how they ate. They probably take more fish and fat if they could, or whatever kind of animal food if they could. They're just probably sick of eating grain all the time, but they didn't have much options to do otherwise, except for the rich and elite, right? But in any case, yeah, grain-based diets really are not healthy anymore, especially with the modern lifestyle. They just aren't. And they are contributing to disease. There are other factors, right? But the carbohydrates are huge negative influence. The excessive carbohydrate intake, grain-based. I'm specifically talking about grain-based diets, which Macrobiotics prides itself in calling itself grain-based. That's knowing what we know nowadays. It's horrible. It's bad. It's like wrong. It's bad. It causes sickness. You call yourself a grain-based diet. This is a sick diet. It's a diet for sickness, right? Why? Why should you eat a grain-based diet? Our bodies are specifically designed to burn carbohydrates and fat. So why would you limit a whole category, right? Low fat. That was a trend promoted by the government because they wanted to I guess, I don't know, it was a strategic thing. The sugar lobby didn't want them to they wanted to increase sugar and high fructose corn syrup, so they thought it was better to demonize fat rather than sugar and carbs, right? But when you're eating tons of carbohydrates, you're constantly spiking your blood sugar, especially when you're paying no attention on how to do it. And grain-based diets, specifically because they think grain is so healthy, they'll just eat a big bowl of grain. Blood sugar will automatically spike when you do that 3 times a day, and then you lower your standards. You're not always going for whole grain. You're going for white rice, pasta, bagels, breads, all this other stuff that's grain, also grain, carbohydrate based. Then you're getting also the blood sugar spike and the lectins. Lectins are another type of so-called anti-nutrient, and they're fine in small amounts, but when you're really concentrating it, which you are in grain-based diets, gluten is a lectin. These are proteins that are not easily digested, and they cause leaky gut. They destroy the gut lining, and they go into the blood undigested and cause inflammation, cause all kinds of diseases. And this is one of the I know for a fact that my father had this, okay? Because he did not like to disclose his health issues, but he did have this. He had leaky gut. He had autoimmune issues and thyroid issues, which are related to leaky gut. And this is a result of overconsumption of grain products and lectins and all that. And this is probably very common in macrobiotic circles, right? So yeah, guys, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around diet and health and all that. And you know, I'm not willing to make excuses. I'm not willing to protect the image of individuals or macrobiotics or grain-based diets as a whole. It's much more important for me to tell the truth, right? And one of the things about macrobiotics is that its founders were Japanese, and they were basically promoting a glorified Japanese diet. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. If you are really see, the Japanese are notoriously restrictive. They will restrict the amount that they eat, and they are workaholics as well. And genetically, they probably have some key factors that help them tolerate their diet much better. Also, I mean, they don't eat like macrobiotic people eat, which is basically like a big bowl of grain with, like, a few wimpy vegetables and very low fat. They're doing things like they're vinegaring their rice. They're eating a lot of noodles and broth, which noodles and broth is probably a better way to eat grain than, like just a big bowl of rice. They're eating their grain with other things. They're eating a lot more white rice, which white rice still spikes blood sugar, but it doesn't have the lectins which brown rice does. And if you're not pressure cooking and soaking properly, then brown rice will cause digestive issues, which a lot of people have experienced. This is common in macrobiotic circles, grain eating circles, where they just become intolerant to whole grain because they've overdone it, and they've overdone it improperly. And yeah, so they have all these issues around that. So not everyone, of course, it depends on the person and their activity, their diet, their lifestyle, everything, right? If you live in the far north and you're constantly exposed to the cold, then you are constantly strengthening your digestion and your nervous system and your whole body, and therefore creating a certain amount of tolerance for that, which there is a macrobiotic community in Alaska that seems to do okay, relatively. I mean, they probably have their own problems, but there's a certain amount of health that comes from constant cold exposure that is probably healing whatever damage they're doing to their gut lining, over consuming grain. But in any case, yeah, guys, grain-based diets is not healthy, and it does contribute to cancer and all cause mortality by weakening the gut, the immunity, and causing inflammation body-wide. It just does, right? And I myself do not claim to be a model of health. I'm a work in progress, but I do get a lot of activity, and I do make efforts, and I do have a good, a growing and a curious understanding of what it means to be healthy. I'm not just like, oh, this is what supposedly is the healthy diet looks like. And I'm constantly doing research. I'm constantly watching videos. I'm constantly seeking out new information, and I'm open. I'm not saying, oh, all these doctors are wrong, which is what macrobiotic people have done. And it's as arrogant as can be. And, a lot of these people are paying the ultimate price, like dying of cancer. Like, you can't just be like, I know better than everyone, and everyone's wrong, and all the new modern science information is wrong, and we're right. Like, you're probably going to die. Like, if that's your attitude, you're probably going to die young of disease, honestly. Because there's so much we don't know, and that's a very arrogant way of looking at it. So yeah, start doing your research. Stop being grain carbohydrate centric. And like I said, we do need carbs. I do eat carbs. I just a very small amount. And I'm still, trying to figure out how much, in fact, grain or carbs I do need. So I'm experimenting, and I encourage you to do that. Like cut it back, add some in, see how it affects your digestion. We need some. What I found, we need some for. I need some for my digestion, right? Some carbohydrates. Otherwise, I get constipated. There are probably ways around that, but still, I'm not in a rush to completely eliminate carbohydrates, because why? Why should I? I don't think that's necessary. I don't want to demonize carbohydrates and praise fat, because then fat will come back and be like, oh, it's causing all sorts of diseases, you know. And then the veganism thing is another issue. Like, people are reluctant to give up grain because they think, well, then I have to start eating. Well, no, you don't. I mean, like I said before, you can be vegan and keto. Not that I recommend veganism or keto, but you can include or exclude as much animal food as you want, right? That's completely up to you. You can do beans and tofu and tempeh and sesame oil and olive oil, right? You could do a complete 100% vegan version of carb minimal, like low carb diet. I like to call it. Or you can, do very high animal food. That's completely up to you, right? It's not exclusive. You can do a low carb diet without all the animal food. You could just eat more salads, more fiber. I like to think of my diet as a high fiber diet, right? That is fiber centric. I do eat a lot of fiber, and then everything else is additive on top of that, like whether it's grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and I learn about each individual food, about its potential uh health giving or taking qualities are, and that's something everyone needs to do. There's no like broad general rule. Vegetables are good to eat and meat and animal food is bad to eat. That's wrong thinking. That's stupid thinking. It's ignorant thinking. If that's your line of thought, you're just a little bit above a monkey. Like, you're just a little bit above an ape, and some ways lower than an ape, because apes at least eat some bugs, right? So you're a little bit maybe on par with an ape. You're about as smart as a chimpanzee, right? Because it's a very, very ignorant, like, obtuse division. Vegetable food good, animal food bad. Like, you're that stupid. Like, there's so many healing benefits to animal food, and so many unhealthy qualities to plant foods. Once you look into it. Why? Because plants don't want to be eaten. So they produce all sorts of chemical compounds that are unhealthy, and you need to work around them. You need to understand these. So guys, that's it for now. Somebody's calling me. I gotta go. All right, thanks. Bye.